College students are back on campuses around the state this week, and they may notice a change in approach from some professors. That's because of a new law that went into effect this summer, Senate Enrolled Act 202. It requires intellectual diversity in the classroom. Higher education reporter Aubrey Wright has more on how colleges are adjusting.
It was just before midnight. A small group of students and faculty held a candlelight vigil into the early hours of Monday at Indiana University's Sample Gates. Professor Ben Robinson, one of the organizers, said they were mourning and protesting the loss of free speech.
And this is to mark on the very first day of school, to mark our determination that the speech that we cherish won't die on this campus.
The vigil ended peacefully. A few hours later, classes were in session. Protesters took aim at a new IU policy by gathering defiantly after an 11 p.m. cutoff for expressive activity. But the group said it had another reason to mourn: Senate Enrolled Act 202.
We want to protect IU. We want this campus to be a place where academic freedom is a real thing. A place where racial diversity and other kinds of diversity is both welcome and honored.
Governor Eric Holcomb signed SEA 202 into law last spring. It requires faculty to teach, quote, intellectually diverse ideas in the classroom. If they don't, their tenure could be in jeopardy. The law also sets up a complaint process, so faculty could be reported. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs also must support intellectual diversity. Indiana State Senator Spencer Deary wrote the policy.
Every university is different. And so we intentionally gave some mandates, but left them a little bit open-ended to allow that flexibility.
SEA 202's language is vague. For example, it doesn't define intellectual diversity. Deary says it's supposed to strengthen debate on campus.
Some of these misconceptions out there that, oh, we need to teach the other side of this issue when the other side is clearly ridiculous. There's no mandate to do that.
Boards of trustees will decide how their schools follow the law.
The bill didn't really create any new powers the Board of Trustees didn't already have. It simply tried to give them a little bit of nudge towards the right direction.
Academics pushed hard against the legislation, saying this kind of political interference will lead to censorship and surveillance. Faculty members in this report can only speak for themselves, and they don't represent their universities.
Nobody wants to be an example, but somebody will be an example.
Masta is worried about how this law will be enforced because it could be weaponized against certain professors or topics. She and other professors are rethinking what they bring into the classroom.
I already have colleagues who are self-censoring.
According to Purdue University's interim policy, complaints about intellectual diversity are sent to HR.
I do think to some degree that's going to be a detriment to the students because, again, we're experts in our research.
Like Purdue, IU is adopting an interim policy. Meanwhile, lawyers and faculty leaders are working on long-term changes. Both universities maintain they support academic freedom. IU's guidance says course content doesn't need to be changed, and faculty are still subject matter experts.
How is this going to be implemented? And we don't know yet because it has not been. It's new, it didn't take effect until July 1.
Tanford says there's no need for panic yet. Faculty reviews are already in place. The boards of trustees have always had authority over the university, and faculty are already sharing many ideas in the classroom. But Tanford says faculty don't trust their leaders. For example, at IU, they passed multiple votes of no confidence against President Pamela Whitten and staged many protests for free speech and shared governance.
But again, that's fear. It's not reality yet.
Indiana State University, one of the most diverse colleges in Indiana, is also sorting things out.
I think the hard part for us was that this bill assumed that we were already incapable of doing our work.
Eberman says Indiana State's trustees passed a policy highlighting the university's strengths, including everyone's opinion in the classroom and having evidence-based evaluations. She says lawmakers and education leaders in the state want the same thing: students succeeding and earning valuable degrees.
We just need to make sure that our legislation and our policy are in alignment with those ambitions.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Aubrey Wright.
While Sunday night's vigil at Sample Gates ended peacefully, the university is pursuing sanctions against a graduate student and professor who spoke at the vigil. Doctoral student Bryce Green and dramatic studies professor Ben Robinson are accused of violating the new expressive activity policy. Robinson says the vigil's primary focus was to make a statement about free speech at IU, but he acknowledged protesters hoped by violating the policy they could better understand it.
In that sense, we certainly were out there to understand what the limits were, but also how it would be enforced.
Green alleges the university came after him based on the content of his speech, since most of the 60 protesters weren't sanctioned. Both Green and Robinson were arrested but not charged during the pro-Palestine protest in Dunn Meadow in the spring.
In fact, they only targeted me and another professor who must have said something that they didn't like specifically. And so they're using this rule as cover to suppress the content of our speech.
The Office of Student Conduct is offering Green two options. He can either meet with the Office of Student Conduct to, quote, accept responsibility for the decisions he made and harm that was caused, or go through the student conduct process, which could lead to actions including suspension and expulsion.